It is a deeply frustrating, highly isolating mental obsession that completely hijacks an adult's emotional freedom without warning. You are a capable, logical individual, fully aware of your independent worth. Yet, the literal second a specific romantic partner, an elite professional circle, or a valued peer group suddenly withdraws their attention and rejects you, your brain undergoes a violent internal regression. You find yourself completely unable to stop mentally looping over their absence. Your mind is hyper-focused on their validation, obsessively replaying past interactions, analyzing your perceived flaws, and checking your phone continuously for a single sign of their return. You sacrifice your current peace, your focus, and your dignity to chase the approval of someone who has clearly walked away. Most people look at this humiliating fixation and label it as a sign of low self-esteem, desperate codependency, or a total lack of self-respect. They feel immense personal shame for caring about someone who doesn't care about them, assuming their personality is defective. But the reality behind this exhausting mental trap has nothing to do with your humility or your character flaws. What you are experiencing is an acute, entirely predictable neurochemical addiction triggered by a profound glitch inside your brain's anticipation pathways. Your mind is not failing. Your survival architecture has simply been trapped inside a predatory biological slot machine. To understand why your brain obsesses over rejection, we must dissect the neurochemistry of intermittent reinforcement. To decipher the mechanical origin of this rejection obsession, we must isolate the precise biological rules that govern how the brain processes rewards. This system is heavily anchored within the mesolimbic dopamine pathway, specifically the nucleus accumbens, which functions as the primary pleasure and anticipation engine of the mind. Under normal conditions of continuous reward, where a partner or peer group offers you predictable, stable validation every single day, your brain experiences a state of calm habituation. The dopamine response gently tapers off because the reward is guaranteed, allowing your nervous system to relax. However, the exact millisecond that validation becomes unpredictable, where they offer affection one day and cold withdrawal the next, your reward circuitry undergoes a violent operational shift. This is known to behavioral psychologists as an intermittent reinforcement schedule. When a reward is uncertain, the nucleus accumbens doesn't power down. It enters a state of hyperactive panic. It treats the uncertainty as a high-priority survival puzzle that must be solved, accelerating its dopamine synthesis to absolute maximum capacity, forcing your conscious awareness to lock onto the target with an intensity that continuous love can never replicate within human flesh. The relentless mental looping that characterizes this obsession is driven by a profound mathematical calculation known as a dopamine prediction error. Your brain operates as a predictive biological machine, continuously running algorithms to calculate the exact resource return on your emotional and physical efforts. When you expect to receive a text, a word of praise, or an act of validation from a significant person, your prefrontal cortex pre-allocates an internal baseline of anticipation. When that validation is suddenly withheld, your reward circuit registers a massive negative prediction error. Your dopamine levels violently crash below their homeostatic baseline, triggering a state of acute internal starvation and neurological pain. To correct this painful chemical deficit, your brainstem takes full control of your cognitive focus. It forces your working memory to obsessively scan your history to find out why the reward vanished. Your brain assumes that if it just thinks about the person enough, analyzes the mistake, and executes the perfect corrective behavior, it will trigger the ultimate chemical payout of their return, converting a random act of human rejection into a high-stakes, compulsive survival mission. The true psychological gridlock of chasing someone who withdrew is locked within a profound communication error between your internal organs and your threat detection centers. As we have established across this archive, Over 80% of the data fibers within your vagus nerve are dedicated to carrying interoceptive signals up from your body to your brain, rather than down. When your nucleus accumbens registers a massive dopamine crash due to rejection, it doesn't just alter your mood, it instantly activates the amygdala, which interprets the chemical drop as an immediate threat to your survival status. Your sympathetic nervous system slams on the accelerator, creating a sick, hollow sensation in your stomach and an elevated heart rate within 12 milliseconds. A split second later, your slow, analytical prefrontal cortex boots up and realizes your physical flesh is vibrating with panic. This triggers a severe interoceptive mismatch. Your conscious mind looks at your room and knows you are safe, but your internal organs are screaming that a life-threatening crisis is actively occurring. Because the survival brain cannot tolerate a contradiction, it prioritizes the physical panic over reality, forcing your logical mind to warp its perspective to match the chemistry, converting their silence into an absolute current emergency. The immediate cognitive consequence of this interoceptive loop is a highly destructive behavioral defense mechanism known as the cognitive illusion of the ultimate redeemer. Because your brain hates mystery and cannot stand experiencing intense physical tension without a clear reason, it forces your prefrontal cortex to construct a deceptive narrative around the person who rejected you. Your mind completely strips them of their human flaws, their ordinary traits, and their toxic behaviors, inflating them into a gold-plated, godlike figure who holds the absolute key to your existence. You form the rigid core belief that your entire value as a human being is entirely dependent on their validation. You tell yourself, if I can just get them to see my worth, the pain will finally stop and my life will be perfect. This fiction provides an immediate, temporary explanation to your confused logical centers. The chasing behavior becomes your ultimate psychological shield. You are trapped in an addiction-like state where your brain uses obsessive text checking, social media stalking, and frantic reassurance seeking as a temporary escape valve, completely unaware that it is actively using their withdrawal to burn the chemical addiction deeper into your own long-term neural pathways. To fully map out this psychological loop, we must evaluate how this chemical obsession completely hijacks your brain's selective attention filters via the reticular activating system, or the RAS. The RAS acts as the primary gatekeeper for your consciousness, deciding which environmental details enter your active awareness and which are discarded as background noise. When your threat networks are hypersensitized to a specific person's withdrawal, your RAS takes its filtering instructions directly from your internal withdrawal state. It optimizes your attention to track only the inputs related to your addiction. When you step into the world, your RAS actively amplifies any passing reference to them, any shared location, or any micro-notification on your screen, bringing them to the immediate forefront of your awareness. Conversely, when your environment presents you with stable, loving, available individuals who offer you consistent validation, your brain categorizes those people as boring, unstimulating, or completely irrelevant to your survival, filtering them out of your social circles. You are locked inside an insulated cognitive filter where your brain actively deletes all evidence of your potential peace, while hyper-focusing on the ghost of rejection, ensuring that you remain trapped in the loop. While your selective attention filters are prioritizing the ghost of rejection, your medial prefrontal cortex is running an automated comparison matrix based on social comparison theory that completely paralyzes your agency. Your brain calculates your safety and belonging by running continuous simulations of your relative position within the social hierarchy. However, this comparison engine operates on a highly asymmetric data set. You experience your own internal reality from the inside out, meaning you are intimately aware of your internal processing friction, your daily humiliation, and the deep fatigue running through your nervous system. In contrast, you experience the person who rejected you from the outside in, staring at their cold exterior, their silence, and their apparent ability to move on without a single ounce of pain. Your analytical brain automatically compares your raw, chaotic, unedited internal blooper reel with their highly refined, silent exterior highlight reel. The system detects a massive structural mismatch. It reasons that if they possess an inherent power and peace that you lack, you are uniquely defective and subordinate within the hierarchy. The algorithm of your mind fails to calculate that their withdrawal is simply a reflection of their own internal limitations, transforming a mechanical dopamine deficit into a personal feeling of deep psychological shame. To understand why the human brain reacts to interpersonal rejection with such an intense, agonizing wave of physical dread, we must leave our safe modern contexts and look at the brutal survival realities of our evolutionary history. The human nervous system did not evolve to navigate modern dating apps or fluid corporate professional networks. For over 99% of human history, your survival was entirely dependent on absolute integration, status security, and acceptance within a close-knit hunter-gatherer tribe. Being cast out, rejected, or ostracized by the dominant members of the group carried an immediate statistical death sentence. A human who was excluded from the campfire was exposed to apex predators, starvation, and rival tribes without defense. Therefore, the human nervous system developed a highly conservative defense mechanism designed to treat any drop in social validation as a high-alert survival emergency. The intense obsession you feel when someone withdraws today is the ancient software of a primitive hominid who is panicking because they have just been kicked out of the cave into the dark. The sickening dread in your stomach is not a reflection of your true romantic love. It is the primitive survival alarm screaming that exclusion means physical death, forcing your brain to chase the tribe at all costs just to stay alive. The persistent physical ache of rejection is also driven by a fascinating structural crossover within your brain's pain processing networks. Functional neuroimaging studies confirm that when an adult experiences social rejection or abandonment, the brain does not simply activate an abstract emotional network. Instead, it fires the exact same neural pathways responsible for registering actual physical tissue damage, specifically the anterior insula and the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex. Your brain processes heartbreak and physical impact using the exact same neuroanatomy. When this physical pain matrix activates due to a social drop, the brain stems drops its baseline production of endogenous opioids and endorphins, plunging your central nervous system into an acute state of physical shock and raw exposure. Your body genuinely hurts. This pain response is a calculated biological defense designed to force you to stop what you are doing and repair the social bond at all costs. You are not experiencing a passing emotional mood. You are experiencing a systemic somatic injury. Your brain refuses to let you rest because it is using the raw weapon of physical pain to whip your consciousness into forward momentum, demanding that you secure the chemical payout of their validation to numb the wound. The long-term danger of remaining inside this intermittent reward trap is the severe accumulation of allostatic load caused by running your nervous system hot in search of a ghost. When your brain convinces you that your survival is dependent on recapturing someone's attention, your prefrontal cortex is forced to run a continuous background program dedicated entirely to hypervigilant scanning and impression management. You have to manually calculate your words, script your texts, obsess over timing, and suppress your true identity just to construct a persona that might win back their approval. From a neurological perspective, running this high-velocity chasing engine requires an immense non-stop expenditure of executive energy and glucose. Over months of continuous execution, this chronic energy drain completely exhausts your nervous system's buffering capacity. The high allostatic load causes a systemic downregulation of your serotonin receptors, plunging your mind into a flat, gray state of chronic mental fatigue and clinical burnout. The energy required to keep the hope alive becomes so overwhelming that your resilience collapses entirely, proving that the chasing behavior you use to avoid the pain of rejection eventually extracts the ultimate long-term tax, the total destruction of your biological vitality. When we systematically look at this entire temporal process through a cold, clinical lens, we can perform an objective somatic autopsy on our obsession and completely strip it of its psychological power. The next time you check your phone or loop through their past validation and feel a sudden, suffocating wave of panic and physical sickness settle into your stomach, you must instantly recognize the mechanical order of operations inside your flesh. The racing heart, the tight throat, and the internal voice telling you that you cannot live without their presence are not profound emotional truths. They are not an indication that they are your soulmate, that your life is ruined without them, or that you are inherently unlovable in your stillness. They are simply the physical, predictable consequence of an overtaxed nucleus accumbens and a hypersensitized evolutionary survival alarm running a low-resolution, intermittent reward loop inside an ancient brainstem that has mistaken a standard human silence for tribal banishment. The terrifying thoughts of unworthiness your mind manufactures during this window are completely empty. They are nothing more than a desperate fictional script written by an energy-starved prefrontal cortex trying to find an explanation for a raw, mismatched dopamine prediction error in your tissues. Surviving the intermittent reward trap requires a deliberate realignment of your perspective around the 12-millisecond logic gap. You cannot prevent your nucleus accumbens from firing when a validation pattern becomes unpredictable. Your reward circuits are structurally hardwired to treat uncertainty as a high-priority data puzzle. Your objective is not to wait for the chemical withdrawal to magically disappear before you walk away, but to completely change your cognitive relationship to the obsession. When the wave of tracking panic compromises your chest, expect the internal delay. Understand that the frantic mental loops are merely the metabolic survival mechanisms of an energy-starved brainstem trying to force you back into a cheap, predatory slot machine. Thank you for analyzing this architecture with me today. If you find value in performing these objective somatic autopsies on our shared biological traps, consider subscribing to the channel. This growing library serves as a clinical, independent archive, mapping the precise science behind the human condition. No trends, no self-help shortcuts, just the unyielding blueprint of your flesh. Explore the rest of our archive to ground your awareness, and I will see you in the next breakdown.